Welcome, friends. Hey, thanks for joining us. Today, I have with you a gentleman that has a story that, as he was sharing it, I think my mouth was open at least half the time. If you are someone who enjoys a story that is just a roller coaster, highs and lows, people overcoming adversity, um, you're going to get to hear one today.
All right.
Lucas Mark is our guest today. As you can see underneath his little name tag thing there, best-selling author of a book called Racing Crows. He'll get into sharing a little bit about that, even just the writing of it and how he's gone about sharing this story with people. It's very, very intriguing to me, and I'm pretty confident is you just hang in there, wait, let him share his story, and then he'll get into about the book. It'll be well worth your time. So that being said, welcome, Lucas. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Randy. I'm so grateful to be here. It's interesting because usually when I do interviews, I usually get like a script of listed questions, but I love the fact that we're going unscripted here. It'd be some really kind of some real raw information, and I'm grateful for the platform. I'm in Las Vegas right now. I'm only here for 2 days. This is where I live. I'm at the Ariba Luxury Apartments. It's my home. But I travel, 10, 11 months out of the year on my book tours. So there's always a story before the story. And for time's sake, what I'll do is I just want to tell you kind of like really the last year of my life and how it's so different and how it's changed and what led up to that. So the first thing is I am a best-selling author and I tour across the country. I have a very unique way of marketing my books. I do something that's called a cottage read. And what I do is I find fans who've read my book and they allow me to come to their homes if they like the book and invite their friends and family. I just went live with my audiobook, my Audible. My Audible is amazing. It was done by a Broadway singer. Her name is Amber McNew. And I just happened to meet her in Utah. She was just visiting there for a couple of months, and she did my entire book. What was unique was about with what Amber did is she did everything in character. Every single character has a different dialect, and it was the first time she'd ever done anything like that before. And I had never had anybody do it. This is my first book, right? So I was a little bit. I didn't even give her an introduction. I just gave her full reign to do what she wants. So she came back with these audio files that just blew my mind. She actually sings in the book, in the audio. She uses her hands and beats the drum, and because there's these marching scenes. But to kind of lead you up to what I think is the most interesting part, my life is interesting in and of itself in a lot of different ways. But the most interesting things are what's happening in my life right now. So a lot of people who know me know that first thing is I'm in recovery. So I was an alcoholic and I still am an alcoholic. I just don't drink anymore. I just celebrated my 8-month sobriety. And I attend a lot of AA meetings all across the country. I speak in recovery houses. But leading up to the release of my book, I was living in an abandoned house. I was homeless in Dayton, Ohio, on the west side of Dayton. And, that I have a real soft spot in my heart for people who have that struggle. I was definitely deep in my addiction and, drinking 2 fists a day. And I don't want to go into too much detail. I don't want to incriminate myself but I wasn't living good. I wasn't living right. And I would write though. That's how my outlet was. I would write next to candlelight in this abandoned house. And across the street was something that was called the House of Bread, and they would feed me once a day. And then there was also a catty corner to the house was Catholic Social Services, and they would allow me to have groceries. And I had this, I lived in this abandoned house, and I would write next to candlelight every night. And when I realized I had a special book, I knew there was nothing I could do with this book unless I got sober. And I just didn't know how to do that. So long story short is I have this spiritual experience in Prescott, Arizona, in Yavapai County, and off of a simple prayer. After 15 years of drinking and using, I stopped immediately. And that's when the magic starts to happen. So the book, once I got sober, then my mind starts working right, and I got my editor together, my Chris. He's with Blue Square out in Denver, Colorado. I met an incredible graphic artist designer. She actually did that poster that's behind me for when I kicked off my tour in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Her name's Ashley McKenzie. And then I ran across Amber McNew, which does my voiceovers. And then I figured out how to print my books in China. And so I use a gal named Wu Eve. And when I get books from China, I don't just get a little box or 2 boxes of books like you might get if you were publishing other places. I print in 1,000 to 2,000 books at a time, and I'm sold out. I don't even have a book to show you guys. I'm completely sold out. And I spend 12 to 14 hours a day marketing my book and selling my books. And I've got goals, and I have to sell 25 or something a day. So I got these cool ass teachers. Mr. Hayward, I don't know if you can see him on there. I'll introduce you to Mr. Hayward. Mr. Hayward is a character in my book. He cooks hooch up in a mountain with a cave and a seagull. And just to kind of give you the storyline of this book that's doing so well all across the country right now, is that it's about crows that talk and politic like people. They read like people, and they have problems and issues. But my book takes place in the Palisades in Southern California. And if you were to open up my book, in the front cover, you would see this big map. And it's a map of California, it's a map of Oregon, it's a map of part of Nevada and Mexico. And within that map, there's 20 different tribes, right? So in each of those tribes have their own names, like the Crags Rock tribe, the Sacramento Flyers tribe, the Laguna Niguel tribe. I just did a whole list of them. But my particular book takes place in the Palisades. And these crows, it makes up about 250 of them. They live on the beach. And every year, so that whole area makes up the West Coast territory of all the crows. And I'm talking about the birds that fly, and they're highly intelligent. And so if you added up all of them and all of their tribes, it'd be about 20,000 of them. And every year, out of those 30 tribes, you can send one representative from your tribe to go down to Mexico and line up on the race line. And they race in the first full moon in October, and it's like their Super Bowl. And this year is unique because it's the first time in 50 years a female flyer has qualified to race against all her male counterparts, and the male counterparts don't want that. They don't want her there. They don't like her. They're mean to her. But she's the great-great-granddaughter of the only female flyer to ever win the race. And it was prophesied 50 years ago that during a time when war was brewing between the owls and the seagulls and the crows, that there would be this light of hope, this beacon of hope, and she is that beacon of hope. And so she takes her cool jersey. It's got a lightning bolt on it with roses and webbing around it, and she puts her jersey on. And her whole tribe goes down to Mexico to line up in support. And that's the basis of the story. But you also have some cool characters in there, like there's a Salem witch who is from Oregon, and she steals the king's eggs that are unincubated, incubates them, and one of the sons, and so they're separated at birth. One of the sons decides to do the right thing. The other one decides he's going to go with the witch. But war is brewing for sure in book 2. Book 2 is called Ghetto Cowboy, and that's when the little boy grows up, to be sort of this vigilante. But I don't want to give too much of the book away, but it's doing real well on there. I suppose I talk a lot more about my book than my personal life, because my personal life is such a sad story. But it's gotten a lot better. Just recently, in fact, 2 days ago, I got to go to my son's wedding, my middle son's wedding, Jacob, and I got to see my ex-wife, who I hadn't talked to except through lawyers for 17 years, and I got to see my ex-mother-in-law, and I gave her a big hug. And that only comes because of sobriety, and my whole kick is not about sobriety. It's just part of who I am, and it will always be a part of my life. and I enjoyed going to meetings. I enjoy my sobriety, and I try to share with people how different my life is now. There was a time previous to me drinking. I had a big business. I had a company called iDiscover Global and Capital Digital Document Solutions, and those businesses were big, $20 million company, and I had 450 employees all across the country. And I made the mistake of picking that first drink up. And late in my life, I was already a multimillionaire, and you would not believe how that drink ran fire through my life. Took me from a beautiful home in Sacramento, California, a Maserati, a Porsche, a Suburban, a Volvo, private schooling for my kids, beautiful house, big business, and it just burned me to the ground. It did that to me. I walked out on my family, and I walked out on my ex-wife and my kids, and I don't know. I don't know what happened. It just happened. And it took me to pure homelessness. I was so ashamed of how I lived my life and the things that I had done and the things that I was doing to my family. I just removed myself from them. I didn't be in contact with them for all these years until I got that call from my son. And he said, I hear you're sober. I said, yeah, I'm sober. And he said, I want you to come to my wedding. And I said, okay, I would love that. And, I have a hard time not getting emotional about that because, I really did live in that abandoned house. I really, it was something else. On a cold day, on those winter days, if I was lucky, I had propane. I would have propane, and to stay warm. And I almost regretted it because sometimes in the middle of the night that stuff went out and it was 10, 12 degrees, and I knew the cold was coming. And it was a very hard, sad time. But I made some beautiful things out of it. One of my main characters in my book is the crow deity is a goddess, and even though I'm not together with my ex, my recent ex, Jessica, who I love dearly still. I was with her for 7 years. On her back is this beautiful tattoo of a stump with a fairy with these beautiful wings on it. And in my book, and I named her Lynn because that's Jessica's middle name. I named her Lynn, and when the goddess has a message to share in this book, either human or crow, she turns her back, and that beautiful fairy comes to life and shares the message. It's a beautiful story, a saga of good and evil, of right and wrong, and it mimics a lot of the challenges that we face today as a society, as far as women's rights, human rights, alcoholism. Mr. Hayward gets sober. I was so desperate to get sober. I don't know if you can see this guy right here, but this is Mr. Hayward, right? And what's one coolest really thing is my publisher just on my printer did this and didn't even know about it. You can't really, it's hard to see, but my AA symbol is in that crow's eye. And I think that's really cool. I just discovered that. I was in the bathroom getting changed, looking like, I said, what's wrong with my crow's eye? And I looked at that and I said, it's got the AA symbol in it. And I think that's pretty cool. When I called my printer up, I said, what'd you do to my shirt and Court? And he said, oh, it's okay, right? And I said, yeah, it's pretty cool. Actually, I like it quite a bit. My story now is one that I find a lot of peace every single day in my life. I attend a lot of meetings and I stay sober and I sell a hell of a lot of books. And I do it from the back of my car, folks. I do that. I don't. I got this cool thing coming up in Sedona. Y'all ought to come down and see what it's about. On the 10th and 11th and 12th of Sedona, I'm doing a reading at Sacred Springs in a cave and my opening partner is going to be a native Indian. He's going to play the drums. And, I think it's already sold out, to tell you the truth. But I find cool things like that where, it's a 3-day event. I'm the headline author. I'll have all my books and all my tour stuff there, and it's going to be a very spiritual experience to hear these drums. And then I'm going to read Gypsy Tales, and so Gypsy Tales is a chapter that talks about the lore and the history of how the Crows got their deity. And what's kind of cool is I tell some of these things that, sometimes people get a little upset, but it's fiction, y'all, so you can't get too upset. But in my book, I say the Crows are the only species to not get on Noah's Ark. And that's caused a little bit of controversy, with some people. I say it's fiction, just roll with it. So what they did is they made a deal with God that two wasn't enough for them, and they were meat, they were just nut eaters before this whole thing. And they said, God told them, look, if you guys don't survive, I ain't bringing you back. That's all there is to it. You can go ahead and stay out in that water if you want. But the Crows, they said okay, and that's when they became big water survivalists. That's when they transitioned from eating nuts and berries to meat. They fed on the carcasses of the dead floating on that ocean. And I talk about that kind of stuff in my book, where that, and I just talk about a lot of cool things. I also bring up, the Greeks are a little bit uneasy with me right now because I talk about Zeus. He has a illegitimate son out of wedlock with a sister, and his name's Boaz, and he's stuck right now on the island of Patmos, the same island John the Revelator was stuck on. So it's not by any means a religious book. It's the farthest thing away from that, but it is a spiritual book in that sense. There's no bad words in it, maybe two or three bad words in it, but it's doing very, very well. And I like to get the word out there. I think I'm done sharing my story for that. There's a lot more to it, but please follow me on my Facebook and watch me. You see, I've covered 62,000 miles in the last 8 months, driving and meeting. I go hundreds of miles to meet fans who buy my books. I spend time with them. I got everything I'm wearing is a gift. This jacket's a gift. This necklaces are all gifts. My rings are gifts. Everything I give my fans because I love them so much. And I have a really cool following of really incredible people. I want, people like Dan Dobson up in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and people like Brian Fox down in Arkansas, and Destiny from Calderon from Hot Springs, Arkansas, or Michael Gleason from Arizona, Cordial Trader from Arizona, just huge Aubrey from up in Orem, and Anthea from Orem, and I could just go. The list could just go on. Lucy up in Fargo was one of my first big fans. I love them, and I know them by name. I've been in their houses. I break bread with them. In Missouri, list goes on and on. I was just in the fan's house in St. George, Utah. I can't even think. I'm sorry, I can't think of the top of it. But she gave me this necklace, this cross necklace, and I love her for that. I met her kids. They all wear my T-shirts, and I get so grateful when people buy my books. When they buy my books, it just gives me so much happiness and joy and hope. I can't leave out people like Cato and Jessica and Michelle and all of my fans in Dayton, Ohio. I'll tell you one funny story. Before I had books, I sold chapters. And I don't mind being incriminating myself, but I was so desperate to get my book out there. And I went to the library, the city library in Dayton, Ohio, and I asked them to print off my single chapters, 30 of my single chapters. And I didn't have no money. I was homeless, but I had a banging first chapter. So as soon as they printed it off, I ran out of and I made up for this. I ran out of the library as fast as I could. And I went up to the Cracker Barrel up on Needmore in Dayton, Ohio. And I sat out there for one night, and I couldn't believe I started signing these autographs. Like, this is my first chapter, and people were giving me $5. And now I have this big poster. I'll have to send you a copy of it. I wish I had it here with me, but it's in my car in Chicago right now, because I flew out here from Chicago just for 2 days for the wedding, and I'm flying back. But it's got signatures of every single person who gave me $5 for my single chapters. I made amends with the library, and they were so happy because I gave them a book. But that's how I did it. I did it. I was homeless, and then I sold $5 chapters, and then I took that money from the $5 chapters, and I paid for more chapters, and then more chapters. And what I did is I created this list of all these people across the country, they bought my $5 chapters, and that's how I funded the first portion of the book. Now I get pallets. Pallets come from China with my books. And it's a beautiful thing, and I sell them by the droves. I appreciate the opportunity. I think I'll answer any questions you have, but in a nutshell, that's my story.
And that is a good story, Lucas. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So when we met, you shared a little bit more about how, again, you were doing really, really well in life, at least by my standards. And again, you touched on the fact no one knows the consequences of that first drink. But yeah, you're a man who worked hard. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth, were you? I mean, you worked hard to become a millionaire. Yeah.
No, I started my first business out of my when I was first married, out of my living room with no employees, by myself. It was called Capital Digital Document Solutions. And what I did, it was a litigation support company. And I basically helped lawyers in discovery process to copy their documents. And I grew that over a 12-year period to a $24 million company with 400 employees. It was based in Sacramento, California. And I ended up selling to sell those offices, but they still all exist. They're still all there with all the employees. I sold them to the managers, but I had to, because I had become so dysfunctional. And my partners were so mad at me as I brought on partners to grow the business, because I found alcohol, and I went off on the deep end, and it took me from my family, and it took me from my livelihood entirely. But yeah, I was a multimillionaire.
Yeah. So again, you worked really hard. You did something that very few people do, and then you did something that unfortunately a lot of people do, and that is go into a downward spiral with addiction. And again, hearing that it was 17 years between you and your ex, you were in that downward spiral for a long time. Is that right?
Yeah. It was very sneaky at first. I would be sneaking drinks, and because the background is I'm kind of a religious person. I was born LDS Mormon, and I served a Mormon mission. So there was a big stretch there where I didn't touch or use alcohol at all. But when I started, I just couldn't stop. I loved it. I was like one of the leaders, like in the Mormon church. There's something called a bishopric, and there's counselors in there, and I was one of the counselors responsible for about 350 people, and I was drinking and going up on that stand. It was a catastrophe, and I couldn't stop. It was such a different life, a double life I was living, until it just finally blew up, and I just left. I left my beautiful home. I left my cars. I left my ex. I left my wife. I left my kids, and I went as far away as I could go to. I didn't know anybody in Dayton, Ohio. I didn't know any. I just went there, and I ended up homeless.
Yeah. So you went from one of the highest highs to one of the lowest lows, and again, you did that for many years.
Yes.
Then again, it's fascinating to me that while you were still in your addiction, there was something in your soul that you allowed to be expressed, to manifest and come out. There was magic within you. And what I love about this is why I call it magic. It is against all odds. It's touched countless hearts, thousands and thousands of hearts, so much that this is the other part of your story that shared me that impressed me so much. You haven't sold these like on Amazon. I know, again, your Audible is now on there, but you've gone into people's homes and done book readings. You've met people face to face, shook their hands again, and they love you and love your story so much that, again, they share with you their families and gifts and stuff. I mean, how many authors have that part of their success story? I mean, it's just fascinating to me that you've touched so many lives.
I've sold in the last 7 months, I've sold I think 11,000 some odd books, and I've signed and hand delivered every single one of those books. I just went online with Amazon because so many people were pressuring me, and I had the Audible. It's only been a couple of weeks. And I don't even know, I don't even watch how it's done. So what I did with that, I didn't even connect my bank account to that. So whatever I'm selling on there, it's just building up. You know, I'm not even worried about it. I sell 20 to 25 books a day. If I have to go door to door, that's how I do it. You know, I've never ever, I print my own books in China. You know, I have an incredible, when the semi truck shows up here at my house, you know, the people call me and say, oh, there's a truck. You know, it's a pallet. It's a pallet. It's as high as I am standing, wrapped with my books. You know, a minimum, you know, 1,000 books at a time, and I sell through those books. I could sell through them in 1 month. And what I'm doing now is I'm getting involved in different, like I go to rock and mineral and gem festivals, and I'm the only author there. And so I'm down, my brother's in this, he sells rocks and gems, Mikhailo Cabochon's out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I get on some of those circuits with them. But almost all my books are sold in people's homes and their families and friends. You know, but this is a real unique thing that's happening in Sedona. I only announced it 2 days ago, and I'm sure it's already sold out. A fan called up and said, I got this Airbnb in Sedona, Arizona, and a lot of my book was written, part of my book was written, in my second book was written in Sedona, Ghetto Cowboy. So I have special vortex places that I write in. There's one in Timpanogos Cave, right at the mount, about right as you enter the park there. One in Bryce Canyon, in this little hotel, room number 10, in the Bryce Canyon Motel. It's got like all these neon lights, and it's a dumpy little room. But when I go there, I write I'll normally write 2,000, 2,500 words a day, but I will, and I can only write 3 or 4 hours at a time. And I'm exhausted, I go to sleep. But when I get to these special spots, and I put on my Facebook where these spots are, and you can actually see my posters there and buy my books there, I will bang out 7,000 to 8,000 words a day. And that's where another spot is in Moab, Utah on the call. There's a certain campsite that I go to, it's right on the Colorado River. And it's campsite number 10. There's another one in where it's in the Virgin Gorge. It's the only campsite where you can camp in the Virgin Gorge. It's in Arizona, in between Nevada and St. George, Mesquite and St. George. And I sent pictures of it, and it's campsite 18. And you know, it's funny, there's a real interesting video on my thing where I don't want to get too crazy on you all out there, but you know, I had to like clear out that campsite from this demon. You know, his name is Ad. I call him Ad. I gave him a name, and he'd be harassing me sometimes about, and it's for addiction, you know. And he actually showed up there, and I captured it all on video. I'll send you a copy of it. But I actually have a conversation with that entity, and it's visible. It's there. You can see it. And I tell him there. I said, you ain't got me no more. You know, I ain't afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you no more. I write. It's a real interesting story. So people who follow me really fall in love with me, because I'm going to fly into Chicago, and I'm driving almost 500 miles to go see a fan, Dan Dobson. You know, I don't have any. I have a scheduled reading in Detroit. I got a scheduled reading in Cincinnati. I got a scheduled reading in Port Huron, and then I go back to Dayton to meet up with a few of these more folks that gave me my first $5. But I'm gonna drive 500 miles to go see a fan who wears my shirt. He's a Rockhound guy. I'm gonna go on Rockhound. So these is like my family, you know. And I don't have any kids no more. I got a banging place to live here. You know, I could take you around and show you. I live in a five-star resort right now in Las Vegas. But I feel comfortable on the road, you know. I'm on the road all the time, and I'm in people's homes. I was driving around to Hurston's. Where is this little place? We put my T-shirts on these skeletons with fans in Missouri just the other day. It was real cool. And then I was up in Tacoma, Washington. I did a reading up in Seattle. And I'll tell you one other real interesting thing. On my anniversary of my 6-month sobriety, I was coming out of Bend, Oregon. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. And if you wouldn't believe this, but an 800-pound elk jumped in front of my car and smashed my car in half. And I was in the woods because it was cold. I thought I was dead. So I thought I was transitioning to the next life. I was sure I was, but then I was in the woods and I was trying to make a fire because I was cold. And I realized if you're not dead, if you're cold. And about an hour and a half later, a helicopter showed up with a body bag and 2 deputies. And I walked out of the woods and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, we're here to pick up the body of the person that's in that car. I said, "That was me." And they said, "There's no way. There's no way." I said, "No, that's me. That was me." And I turned down any. When I say I'm sober, I've taken 1 Tylenol for that accident. One time, and that's it. I don't smoke weed. I don't use drugs. I don't drink alcohol. But I got on the spiritual level with my heart. And they said, "It's just impossible." The elk was so big that the 2 people who came out to help me out in the ambulance, they realized I was fine. They pull off the road. They're calling the ranger the whole time, all there, because they wanted to get the tag. They said it was the biggest elk they ever seen. And so that's just how my life is. That it's so unique and so special. I really should have been dead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you shared pictures with me of your vehicle.
Oh, I did? Okay, good. Yeah, that was something.
I honestly use the word vehicle because I can't recall what the heck model cars. It looks like a crunched up aluminum can. Folks, if you've ever like smashed a can, and it's you can't see the label on the can anymore. This is like what this car was like, and again, absolutely positively.
Randy, it was.
If he had said that the driver was dead, you wouldn't hesitate for a moment. It's like, of course, the car doesn't exist anymore. It's mangled, and for him to have come out of that alive, again, it's just one more part of the story. But also one more thing before we wrap things up, I want to talk about how Disney's discovered you as well too. Aren't you in talks with Disney about bringing forth your story?
Yeah. So my attorney, John Carmichael, hopefully you don't mind me saying, he's been a long time attorney of mine my whole life. He was an entertainment lawyer for MCA Records, and he was working at a big law firm, and he actually is an author also, and so they one thing led to another, and anyways, the manuscript's yet with Pixar. Now Pixar is real clear. They create their own stuff, right? But there's some caveats to that. If the story is good enough, then they'll buy the rights. And that's where we're at right now. They're interested in buying the rights for the book. And they made it very clear to me that if they were to buy these rights, they would pay me for them, and I would have no real say in how it gets developed. But I said, "Go ahead and buy the rights. I'll write another book. It's fine." They were not interested in Ghetto Cowboy. Ghetto Cowboy is a little bit darker. It's more about that's my second book. And then my third book is Light Warriors. And I'm almost wrapped up with Ghetto Cowboy. And Light Warriors is a beautiful book. But, there's if Pixar doesn't pick it up, there's a lot of other people who are interested in these as a cartoon and the storyline. But I just don't depend on those things anymore. But I did have an initial meeting with them. They do have the manuscript. They are reworking it. They're supposed to come with an offer. So we see what happens.
Yeah. But again, that's amazing. Folks, we're talking about in a relatively short period of time. This is a man who's gone from living in an abandoned home by candlelight at night, who wrote a book that has touched tens of thousands of hearts. It's just an amazing story. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. Again, Lucas, we're going to stay in touch. And again, I don't know what's going to happen in Sedona other than magical things. I hope love how this stuff unfolds.
If you have a chance, come down for one day. It's a multi-day thing. And so, I always find a spot for you. And I feel so grateful for you giving me this platform. And I'm going to share it. And anything that I can do for you, please let me know. Make sure we get together when I get back. I'm leaving in 2 days back to Chicago, and then I'm busy all the way up to Christmas time on the East Coast. Miami, DC, New York City. I'm releasing the Audible in Times Square just a couple days before Christmas. Buffalo. Then I go to Nashville, Dallas, Houston, El Paso, all set up, and then I come back through Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and then I come home for New Year's here in Las Vegas. But you follow me, you be out there, and I make sure I get you some tour shirts. And I'm very grateful for you. Thank you so much for the platform today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And friends, thank you for listening to this. I hope you've been inspired by the story like I have. Again, I'll put a link underneath this of how you can get in contact with Lucas, how you can get access to his book on Audible. Again, it's certainly worth the time to hear the story. Again, it's so entertaining. It's so amazing. And now you get to know the author a little bit better. So again, thank you all for joining us. Until we meet again, may peace